Peace be with you, and welcome to another edition of Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. Now, these are the days of Eid, and Muslims everywhere are commemorating the sacrifice of Abraham. In this edition of Let the Quran Speak, we'll look at lessons from that sacrifice. We'll also take a look at a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, and we'll end with questions we've received from you, our viewers. But we begin with a verse of the Quran. With me today is Brother Shabir Ally from the Islamic Information Center. Brother Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
Now, the verse we're dealing with is from Surah 2. It's verse 25, and it speaks about some of the pleasures of paradise. Tell me what it says.
Yes, it says, كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا مِنْ ثَمَرَةٍ رِزْقًا قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلُ وَأُتُوا بِهِ مُتَشَابِهًا. Whenever they're given something to eat from in paradise, they will say, this is similar to what we used to be given in the worldly life. But they're only given something that resembles it.
And then it speaks about how they'll have companions and so on.
لَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ. They will have pure companions. Pure
I want to get into that discussion of some of the pleasures that we will see in paradise, because some of the descriptions in the Quran seem very physical, very earthly. And to what extent is that an appropriate description of heaven, or something that we would expect in heaven?
Well, the description of heaven is difficult for us here on earth, because whether Christians or Muslims or anyone else to think about something that is so metaphysical, that is beyond our physical senses, is really difficult. Our thought patterns, even our language, is shaped based on our experiences. And our experiences are to a large extent limited by our physical senses. So we know physical things. We know what they look like, what they smell like and taste like, and so on. But when we think of things that are outside of this experience, we can only think of things in the abstract.
So God talks about things like rivers of honey and milk. He uses descriptions like that. Is that to appeal to our sense of pleasure then?
Well, there are descriptions of things that people already know and things that people derive pleasure from, to in a way, say that ultimately you will be having the kinds of pleasures that you know about that comes from this kind of activity. But it is that ultimate pleasure that is indescribable that is really the aim of these descriptions.
So is there a description of something beyond the physical then? Beyond, for example, eating and drinking and sort of relaxing, reclining? What other sorts of descriptions are there that point to the fact that paradise is more than that?
There are many verses of the Quran that speak about the pleasure of God. For example, there's the verse from Surah 98, which says, رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. God being pleased with them and they being pleased with God. So there is a kind of mutual pleasure-giving. These believers give pleasure to God, and God is pleased with them, and they in turn are pleased with God. There is the verse at the end of Surah Al-Fajr, in which God addresses His servants by saying, "Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna, O you tranquil soul, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah." Return to your Lord, being pleased with Him and pleasing to Him. فَادْخُلُوا فِي إِبَادِي. Enter among my servants. Enter my paradise. فَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. So the idea of pleasing God and being pleased with God, this mutual satisfaction between God and God's servants is really the ultimate goal of paradise.
Do Muslims look forward to that then?
Yes, and in fact...
Or do they gotten caught up by the eating and the drinking?
Well, some people may, in fact, just simply remain in their thinking at that level. But even the stories that are mentioned in the Islamic traditions that speak of the pleasures of paradise, in fact, give you a kind of a hierarchy where things are provided to people, and then, let's say, the last person who comes out of paradise, and he is given this and then given that, and then God asks him, well, what else would you like? And he says, God, well, you've already given me like 10 times what I could imagine in the world, and what else could I want? And God eventually says to him, I give you something more. I announce to you my pleasure, after which I will no longer be displeased with you. And that, according to this tradition, is the greatest achievement in paradise.
And where would we find this tradition?
Well, this is mentioned in many sources. There are small booklets that describe paradise and hell. It will usually be found there. But there's a verse of the Quran as well, which says, وَرِضْوَانُ akbar, the pleasure of God, this is the greatest.
So, I mean, do these descriptions of the physical, do they apply to us today? Do they still have some sort of application today, or were they more applicable to, for example, the desert people?
Well, in the first place, it does apply to the people who first heard this message. It had to be told to them in a language that they could understand. The descriptions had to be used of things that they had already experienced.
Like dates and figs and things like that.
Figs, rivers, because of course if they're short of water and the water is mentioned as one of the delights of paradise, then they understand that paradise is something really to aspire to. Mm-hmm. In the Christian tradition, there is a mention of playing harps, and one of the greatest Christian thinkers of all time, C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, talks about this as a question. There's some people have the imagination that they will just be in paradise playing harps all of the time, and then someone would ask, well, do I really want to be in paradise to do just this? But as he then explains, so what is really meant by all of these descriptions is the ultimate pleasure that comes from things such as that would be achievable in paradise. And I think you're right that the descriptions in the Quran in the first place had to be relevant to the people to whom it was first addressed.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.